ship named the Victoria set sail on the Mediterranean from the port of Latakia in Syria. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary cargo vessel, but the Victoria was being used for a mission very different than any job given to the Post Office or the Federal Express. Among a cargo of lentil and cotton, 3 containers were concealed in the Victoria's hull. They held 40 tons of Iranian weaponry, not just guns and TNT, but sophisticated missiles and other weapons normally held only by modern militaries. Intelligence showed that Iran intended to transfer these weapons to terrorists in Gaza. Fortunately, Israeli forces intercepted the Victoria before its cargoes could reach their intended destination. Yet the weapons containers on the Victoria held an important reminder for this Council. Iran and its allies, the Assad regime, have absolutely zero regard for the basic norms and laws of the international community. They systematically violate Security Council Resolution 860 and many others, transferring sophisticated weapons to terrorists in Gaza, in Lebanon, and well beyond. The consequences of their illegal smuggling activity can be measured in the blood of many innocent civilians and the spread of instability throughout our region. Each Iranian rocket is armed with a warhead that could cause a political earthquake well and beyond Israel's borders. In his report to the Council last November, the Secretary General noted that Hezbollah, a terrorist organization inside the Lebanese state, has reached almost the capacities of a regular army. Hezbollah carries Iranian arms, is trained by Iranian forces, is funded by Iranian petrodollars, and acts as a proxy force for the Iranian regime from the hills of South Lebanon to the streets of Bangkok. It is time for this Council to hold accountable those UN member states that arm, train, and fund terrorists. The international community's failure to act today will only initiate a bigger nightmare tomorrow. Madam President, the issue of illicit trafficking and the infrastructure that supports it is not only an Israeli problem or Middle Eastern problem or an African problem. It's a global problem. Illicit smuggling is made possible by an increasingly linked network of smuggling rings, transnational criminals, and terrorists. These groups are working together around the world like never before. Terrorists understand that if you can smuggle narcotics into a European capital, you can do the same with an anti-aircraft missile. They understand that lawless environments are fertile ground for radicalization, and they recognize that selling drugs can pay for bombs. Hezbollah's activities offer a disturbing example of this trend. This terrorist organization has established itself as a major player in the global narcotics markets, operating a network that spans from West Africa to the Middle East to Latin America. Hezbollah uses the global network to fund its terrorist activities and to provide the logistical support to carry them out. The Hezbollah network shows how a gap in one nation's counterterrorism capabilities is a weak link that can be exploited with the potentially devastating consequences for the rest of the world. It is clear that instability in one country can mean catastrophe in another. Israel continues to share its unique expertise with others in the global fight against these networks. We are closely engaged in counterterrorism capacity building initiatives with a number of states and regional organizations in Africa, South America, and Asia. These collaborative efforts span a long range of issues, from terrorist financing to aviation security, from money laundering to border protection. Madam President, among all those issues related to illicit trafficking, there is no greater threat than the spread of weapons of mass destruction. I already described Iran's behavior without nuclear weapons. We can only imagine how this regime would behave with nuclear weapons and who they would share them with. The proliferation of WMD is also a great cause for concern in Syria, where instability threatens to give terrorist groups like Hezbollah the keys to Assad regime's stockpile of weapons. This includes long-range missiles as well as biological and chemical weapons. As the regime of our region's most dangerous ophthalmologist stands on the brink of collapse, the international community must keep an eye, a very close eye, on its collection of very dangerous weapons. Madam President, while the Victoria remains held at port, other smuggling ships are streaming across the high seas with cargoes full of rockets and explosives. One of those rockets could spark the next major conflict. One of those weapons could be used in the next mass casualty terror attack. One of these bombs could be a nuclear bomb. We cannot allow those who want the Victoria to be victorious. Preventing these weapons from reaching their destination is our collective obligation. Terrorists and their backers depend on divisions in the international community to keep their operations afloat. No nation is free from responsibility, and no nation can escape the consequences of an action. Thank you very much, Madam President.